All right, let's dive right into an explainer that explores a genuinely mind-bending technological breakthrough. We're talking about redefining the absolute final frontier of human privacy. What we're looking at right now is a crazy convergence of advanced material science, generative AI, and incredibly sophisticated neural decoding. It's basically dragging brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, straight out of the lab and right into the real world.
I want you to imagine a world where your deepest, totally unspoken thoughts aren't a private sanctuary anymore. Instead, they're just a stream of data. I mean, for all of human history, our minds have been our absolute fortress, right? The locus internus, completely untouchable by the outside world. But today, we have to ask ourselves a pretty uncomfortable question. As neurotechnology advances to capture our neural signals 24/7, who actually owns your subconscious?
And this chilling reality is being brought straight to light by the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. Their recent report basically warns us that neurotechnology is piercing the ultimate veil. Look, we aren't just talking about reading deliberate commands, like thinking about moving a cursor on a screen. No, we are talking about technology that could very soon access totally involuntary thoughts, your emotional states, and even subconscious processes. We're talking about tendencies and biases that haven't even been filtered through your own conscious brain yet.
Section 1. The speed of thought, surpassing the limits of speech. So, let's see how this transitions from pure science fiction into hard, undeniable engineering benchmarks. Because to really grasp the privacy risk here, you first have to understand the absolutely staggering leaps in sheer data transmission speeds that are happening as we speak.
Older BCI benchmarks honestly stand in stark contrast to the newly established Sonic benchmark, which comes from a company called Paradromics. They've developed the Connexus BCI, which is this fully implantable, totally wireless device. And to test it, they didn't just rely on theoretical computer models, they actually implanted it into the auditory cortex of sheep. They played controlled sound sequences and then decoded the neural activity to predict those sounds, tracking the whole thing over a massive 10-month period post-implantation.
And here is the absolutely crucial point. Paradromics' new Sonic benchmark hit a transmission rate that is 10 to 20 times higher than the rates we've seen demonstrated in Neuralink or BrainGate clinical trials. 10 to 20 times. And it's roughly 100 to 200 times faster than the reported performance of other competitors out there, like Synchron.
The Connexus system can stream up to 1,600 neural channels simultaneously. It achieved over 200 bits per second of information transfer with just a 56 millisecond latency. To put that into perspective, transcribed human speech clocks in at about 40 bits per second. So what does that actually mean? It means the hardware is literally capable of extracting information from the brain way faster than a human being can physically speak.
Moving to Section 2, inside the locus internus, the fortress of the mind. With speeds this staggering, we desperately need to examine what happens when machines breach this inner fortress. Because think about it, when you're pulling 200 bits of neural data every single second, you aren't just getting the user's intended commands. You're capturing a massive amount of what researchers call data exhaust. Basically, that's all the background brain activity that the user never explicitly meant to share with anyone.
And this is exactly why we have to talk about cognitive liberty. It's essentially the right to mental self-determination. You know, the current data privacy frameworks we all rely on, like GDPR, well, they're built entirely on the idea of explicit, informed consent. But how on earth do you give informed consent for a machine reading your mind when so many of these neural signals are completely involuntary? If a BCI detects a subconscious reaction or some emotional spike before you're even aware of it yourself, our traditional models of consent just completely break down.
Which leads us straight into what experts are calling the privacy paradox. Now, don't get me wrong, these devices offer absolutely miraculous medical benefits. We're talking about restoring communication for patients with ALS, treating severe depression, or even allowing paralyzed individuals to walk again using robotic exoskeletons. It's incredible. But to access these life-changing therapies, users are basically forced to trade away their most intimate, raw, and involuntary neural data to external systems and algorithms. It's a profoundly tricky ethical tightrope.
Section 3. The weaponization of mind. Surveillance and social control. This brings us to the really profound societal implications outlined by international humanitarian experts. The thing is, neurotechnology is fundamentally dual use. The exact same algorithms that can be used to cure can also, unfortunately, be used to monitor.
The Geneva Academy has published a very stark,
impartial warning about where neurotech and our right to privacy intersect. They strongly emphasize that these technologies could enable completely new forms of surveillance, forms that penetrate much, much deeper into our individual autonomy than literally any previous technology in the history of humankind.
The report impartially lays out some very objective, documented threats coming from both state and corporate actors. On a geopolitical level, governments could potentially leverage neural monitoring and cognitive biometrics for absolute social control. Think about it, detecting political dissent, enforcing ideological compliance, or even trying to predict subversive or criminal behavior before it actually happens. And then on the commercial side, corporations could harvest your subconscious triggers for what's called biometric psychography. That means identifying exactly what drives your purchasing decisions and manipulating your consumer behavior, all without you ever consciously realizing it.
All right, Section 4, the race to regulate, shielding the subconscious. Let's look at how the legal world is frantically scrambling to put up safeguards around our neural data. Because as it stands right now, a lot of consumer neurotech companies have incredibly ambiguous privacy policies when it comes to how they anonymize, repurpose, or flat out sell all of this neural data exhaust.
Tracing the legal timeline here is fascinating because Chile actually led the global charge. Back in 2021, they went ahead and amended their constitution to specifically protect brain activity. And that led to a massive landmark ruling in 2023 where the Chilean Supreme Court actually forced a consumer BCI company called Emotive to completely delete a user's brain data. That set a huge global precedent. The United States only really started catching up in 2024, with Colorado and California amending their privacy acts, and then Montana following suit in late 2025.
So, in the US, we're seeing a really patchy state-by-state response. Colorado made history by explicitly categorizing neural data as sensitive biological data. California stepped up by extending its rigorous CCPA protections to cover neural activity. But then you have Minnesota's proposed bill, which takes a highly precautionary approach. It would require an independent notice every single time a BCI connects to a user, plus completely separate consent for each specific use or third-party share. It's a really interesting attempt to solve that static consent problem we talked about just a minute ago.
Ultimately, as all these academic institutions and researchers are emphasizing, we have to find a delicate balance here. We absolutely want to promote these incredible medical innovations that give paralyzed individuals their voice and independence back. That is a game changer, but it simply cannot come at the expense of our cognitive liberty. Regulatory frameworks need to be baked directly into the technology through privacy by design, rather than just slapped on as an afterthought once the data has already been harvested and sold.
I'm going to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought to chew on as this technology marches relentlessly into our daily lives. If an algorithm decodes your subconscious, pulling your raw neural data at 200 bits per second, and predicting your feelings and choices before your own conscious mind even registers them, whose thought is it, really? Think about that for a second.